my hand. An example must be made. You see? Sensei Lee, you have to help me!
Then one day, the dragon returned.
You know, you asked me to come.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for another classic Jean-Claude Van Damme film. Today I'm taking a look at the 1985 Karate Kid clone, really. No Retreat, No Surrender. The film is directed by Corey Yun and it stars Kurt McKinney and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Now the film focuses mainly on Kurt McKinney's character Jason Stillwell, who is a budding martial artist. He trains at his dad's martial arts school. His dad's a traditionalist when it comes to martial artists. He doesn't believe in fighting, defense only sort of thing. And his father's dojo is in trouble financially, and he gets visited by some gangsters. And one of the gangsters, the enforcer, is Ivan, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme, who attacks his father, breaks his leg, and they essentially have to basically move, start afresh sort of thing. But Jason's struggling. He's not accepted at the local martial arts school. He's ridiculed, he's bullied, so on and so forth. It all comes to a head with his father, and he's obsessed with Bruce Lee. And I'll say Bruce Willis then. Bruce Lee. And he lives near his Mecca, really, which is Bruce Lee's grave, and he visits him at his grave and begs Bruce Lee for some guidance. And Bruce Lee visits him. Bruce Lee's spirit visits him and teaches him martial arts, which then leads to a local tournament where he comes face to face once again with Ivan, and he attempts to become the hero of the day. Right. What are my thoughts on No Retreat, No Surrender? Well, this is one of the most nostalgic martial arts films from my childhood. This is one I watched pretty much on loop back in the day. It was at a time, obviously, when Karate Kid was a massive success, and you know, they were trying to recreate that magic with a lot of films, really. And this one's no exception. I mean, it essentially is, in many, many ways, a Karate Kid clone. No getting away from it. And while this isn't as big a budget, obviously, as the Karate Kid, I'm not even sure if this got a cinema release. I remember watching the trailer for this. You know, back in the VHS days in the 80s, you would go to the VHS shop, you would hire your VHS, and there'd be posters everywhere for upcoming films. And I remember seeing the posters for this and getting quite excited. And the trailer for this, you know, it appeared on loads of different VHSs, because in there, a bit like you do with the Blu-rays and DVDs, in those days, VHSs, you had a series of trailers before the main film came on, and the trailer for this was on pretty much all the releases at that time, sort of thing. And it looked good, it looked exciting. However, one thing I've realised, which I didn't really care about back then, because I've rewatched the trailer, obviously, for this film. For this review, the trailer is basically a mini version of the film. It literally goes through the whole film, beginning to end, even finishing on like the final showdown with Van Damme and Jason. It's quite funny, really. I mean, you won't get away with it these days. The fans would go mad. But it was the 80s. That's what they did, I suppose. So, I mean, what you get here is a massively over-the-top and entertaining martial arts film that makes no sense, because I remember watching it as a kid and not blinking an eye when Bruce Lee turns up. You know, actually being quite excited, because we all knew, I knew Bruce Lee was in them days, in the 80s. He was still massively popular. He still is. So when he turned up, I didn't question it as a kid. And watching it as an adult, you're a bit like, yeah, that's a bit silly, isn't it? Bruce Lee's ghost turns up to teach him martial arts. I mean, it's corny as hell, but it does work for the film. And if you've never seen No Retreat, No Surrender, and you're thinking in your head, that sounds really stupid, it is stupid, but it's a lot of fun. It really is. This is one of those martial arts films that is full of music, you know, singing. I mean, which is what they did all the time in the 80s with movies. And this one has got like uplifting, you know, pop music playing. It's got great training sequences. You've got underdog story, all this kind of stuff going for it. And then you've got the face off with the screen villain, played very well, in fact, by Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, he barely says a word in this film. I think this was only his second credited screen appearances, but this was his breakthrough role. There's no getting away from it. You know, it was clear that Van Damme was a star from watching this. Because it's unfortunate, really, that Kurt McKinney, even though I know he has made other things, I couldn't tell you anything else he made after this. I mean, this essentially was his martial arts, you know, film. I don't believe he did anything that stood out following this. And there may be fans of Kurt McKinney will comment and say, actually, no, he did some other good stuff. But I personally couldn't tell you anything else he did. And interestingly as well, my understanding is that Kurt McKinney, prior to making this film, he was 22, I believe, when he made this film, even though he was playing a teenager. He'd applied to be a police officer, you know, to go into the police academy and train to be a police officer, and he kind of retracted his application when he got the part of this film to focus on his film career. So interestingly, he could have been a police officer, I guess. And also the actor who played the spirit of Bruce Lee in this film actually doubled for Bruce Lee in The Game of Death. You know, when Bruce Lee passed away, they finished that film, and this guy stood in and did some of the Bruce Lee bodywork for that film. So it's a really fun and entertaining film, and it's one of those films that will make you cringe at times with the dialogue. I mean, it really is awful at times, the dialogue. You know, there's a really, I mean, his best friend, I can't remember who plays his best friend in the film, who's like obsessed with Michael Jackson. He walks around looking and dressing like Michael Jackson. There's a scene in the film where he does this dance like Michael Jackson at this disco, and it's like, oh God, I can't watch it. So there are a handful of scenes in this film that are hard to watch. There's more than one line of dialogue that's hard to take, but you got to remember when this film was made. I mean, it was filmed, I think, in 84, and it came out in late 85 or early 86, something like that. And certainly in the UK, it might have been around 87 when I first saw it. I'm not really sure, to be honest. But it didn't feel cringy and corny at the time when I watched it. You know what I mean? It's very much a film of its time. But you watch it again these days, and you'll definitely. It'll feel like you're sucking on a lemon sometimes, because you'll be going like that. So quite a lot with the dialogue and the corny pop songs playing and things like that. But it's good. It's enjoyable. It's uplifting at the end. You get a great showdown. You know, it was one of those, you know, hairs on the back of the neck moments when he's fighting Van Damme at the end. It's really cool, really exciting. And as weird and odd as this film is, it's a big part of my childhood, and I've got fond memories of it, which is why I probably arguably overscored it. I mean, you know, if you actually scoring this film on quality, it wouldn't be the score I've given it, 8 out of 10 for sure. It's mainly in the genre that it sits in and the nostalgia that it gives me. I think the score I've given it is fair. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this Jean-Claude Van Damme classic with you. I'll be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.